Hello, scientific writers. In the previous video, I told you about how I found scientific literature as a graduate student in the 90s. In this video, I'm going to tell you how I got that literature printed once I found it. Now, in the late 90s, they started coming out with PDFs that we could print just like we do now. But in the early to mid 90s, when I was a graduate student, there were no PDFs. You had to go and get a paper version of the journal and find a photocopier and make a photocopy. And that's how we did it. After I went to the library and I looked through the current periodicals, or I looked through Science Citation Index, and I found a list of papers that I wanted to go check out, what I would have to do is spend another 2 or 3 hours in the library and go sometimes into current periodicals and find the paper in that room. Or if it was a little bit older, like more than 6 months old, it would be in the bound journals. And so I'd have to venture into the stacks to find those. So what are the stacks? The stacks are those tall shelves full of books where the books are just stacked left to right, in the library, in the third floor, the fourth floor, or in the basement of the library, away from the main level where all the action is happening. The quiet parts of the library where not many people are going. And so venturing into the stacks, was a confusing experience at first, but once I figured out how to do it, I really enjoyed that part of the research process. And I kind of miss it. I wish I could go find papers in the stacks now, but we have PDFs and I just print the papers and it takes about 30 seconds. But in the early 90s, we couldn't do that. So if I had to go find an article that was in the stacks, first I would have to go to the library catalog and look up the call number for that specific journal. So once I found the call number for that journal, I would have to find out where that call number was in the library, which floor it was on, and which section of that floor. And then I would go find that, look up that journal, find the volume, the issue number, pull it out of the stack, flip open the pages until I found the article I was looking for. And then the first thing I would do is start reading that article right then. I would read the abstract, and if it looked like it was something I didn't want, then I just put the journal back. If it looked like something that might be useful to my research, then I would flip through it, look at the figures and tables, maybe read the first part of the discussion. And then if it was something that I wanted, I would have to mark that spot in the journal, because it's kind of an effort to flip through there and find it. Typically they would bind 6 to 12 different issues of the journal together, and it makes a really thick book. And so it's kind of hard to flip through the pages. So I would usually tear off a little piece of paper from a scrap page and make a bookmark, and then close the book. But before I did that, I would also look at the reference list at the back of that article and see if there were any other titles that caught my eye that I thought I might need to look at. And usually there were 3 or 4, so I would have to write those down and look up the call number for that journal, find it in the stacks, and just repeat that process. So if I were going into the stack just for 1 or 2 papers, I would just walk up there and carry the journals in my arms. But if I knew I was going to be in there for a session, I'm looking for 10 or 12 or more papers, and that's how I would do it back then. I would batch these things. Then I would get a cart. So I'd get a library cart and take it on the elevator to the stacks, load it up with the journals. I might have 20 or 30 different bound journals on that cart. Then I would have to go to the copier room. So I would go back in the elevator, take the cart to the first floor where the copier room was located, and wheel the cart in there. The copier room had, probably 25 photocopiers in it. And sometimes I would go into the room and they were all being used by other students. And so I would have to wait for a copier. But this copier room was nice because we could grab this little mechanical counter, and you'll plug that into the copier, and as you make copies it would count how many you made. So you could just pay for it at the end. You didn't have to drop coins into the copy machine over and over. And my advisor had an account that would pay for the photocopies, so I didn't have to pay for it out of pocket. So anyway, once I got the counter and I got an open photocopier, I would wheel the cart over there and just start opening up my journals to the pages and putting them on the copy machine and making a copy of that page, turn the page, make a copy of that page. And that sounds pretty easy, but when these journals are bound, sometimes the pages are really tight and you couldn't even open the book wide enough to copy the entire page because some of the words would be crammed up into the fold. And so you'd have to really press hard onto the bound journals to spread the pages open wide enough to copy it. And after 3 or 4 hours of that, it was quite a workout, and my arms would be a little shaky at the end sometimes. But it was a lot of fun. And then, you know, you'd have the stack of papers, and they'd have the station in the middle of the room where you could use a hole punch and a stapler and get everything organized. That's how we did it up until the mid-90s. And then the latter part of my graduate student career, we did start getting PDFs, and some of the journals started going to where they would have online and also print, and so you could grab PDFs and print those on your printer instead of going to the library and making photocopies. But that wasn't always a better way to go, because I don't know if it was the printer or if the PDFs were made at too high quality or what, but in the early days it took a really long time for them to print. It might be faster to just go and walk to the library and make photocopies compared to making a PDF printout. So that was an interesting time. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting. I will see you next time, and happy writing.